We will now match the conditions given in question 13 to 16 with the corresponding graphs in part A to part D. So for that, we'll be utilizing this definition of the first derivative and the second derivative. That is, whenever the first derivative is positive, we see that it is an increasing function, and whenever it is less than 0, it is a decreasing function. And whenever the second derivative is positive, we see that it is concave up in that interval, and whenever the second derivative is less than 0, we see that the function is concave down in this interval. So we are going to use the definition of the first derivative and second derivative to match the conditions of this first derivative and the second derivative with the corresponding graphs. So first, let's verify this 13. Here we have the first derivative is positive, so therefore it is an increasing function. So let's choose the increasing function out of the four graphs. Out of these four graphs, here it is increasing, and this one is also increasing. And then the next condition is the second derivative is positive, which means the graph has to be concave upward. So only the graph in part C is concave upward. So therefore, for question 3, this is the correct graph. So we say that for question 3, the graph in part C is the correct graph. Now let's select this question 14. Here we have the first derivative is positive, which means it's still an increasing function. So we have to choose this. Let's also look at the second derivative is negative, which means it is concave down. So this graph is the graph of the concave down. So therefore, we see that for question 14, the graph in A is the correct one. So for question 14, the graph in A is the correct one. Now let's choose the question 15. Here the first derivative is less than 0, which means the function is decreasing. So these are the two graphs where the function decreases. And using the second condition, that is the second derivative is positive, it has to be concave upward. So only the graph in B is the, I'm sorry, only the graph in D is concave upward. This is part of the concave upward. So we see that for question 15, D is the correct graph. So for 15D is the correct one. And finally, for question 16, obviously it has to be B. However, let's also verify that. That is, the first derivative is less than 0, so it is decreasing. And then the second derivative is less than 0, so it is concave down. So this is part of the concave down graph. So therefore, for question 16, the graph in part B is the correct graph. Thus, we have determined all the conditions and matched them with the corresponding graphs.